Alright guys, hope you guys are all doing well. So as you can see, we're not in the car. We are in the apartment, and the reason being is because I'm just gonna get right into it. This past month, I played so much poker that I couldn't keep up with the video editing. So that has resulted in is around 15 sessions that I played, that I edited, that I'm not gonna be making individual videos about. But the good news is that I still have the most memorable hands condensed in the months period in today's video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Nothing too much more to be said besides this won't happen again in the future, and this isn't going to be a reoccurring theme. I just still wanted to get out, some of the hands from this past month, along with, just being transparent to let you guys know that, you don't always win. So, a little spoiler alert, So let's get right into it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we also have a Q&A at the end of the video that I figured would be appropriate now that I have 5,000 subs. So greatly appreciate that, and let's get right into the first hand of the month. All right, guys. The first hand of this video, we're in the game for $1,000, and we look down at 2 sevens within the first orbit. There's a limp to me, and I open up the action at $20, and we see a call from the low jack, and then also a call from the big blind. Keep in mind, this is, once again, within the first orbit, so I don't have any reads on the players. So let's see a flop and see what happens. So we're going to a flop 3 ways, which comes down 4, 5, 6 rainbow. So all things considered, this is probably one of the best flops we could ask for with pocket sevens. When action checks to me, definitely want to be going for some value and denying equity from any overcards. So I bet out $50 and the low jack quickly releases. But the big blind, on the other hand, has another plan in mind as he bumps it up to $110. Of course, I'm calling the $60, but now it's a question whether I want to be putting in more money at the moment. I think he could easily have connected with this board himself, but I think he is competent enough to know that this board shouldn't really connect with my range either. So with that being said, I'm just going to make the call, and hopefully he can blast off on another street in the future. Going heads up to a turn in position, which comes a 9 of hearts. So now there's another flush draw on the board, but I don't think the 9 as a whole is that relevant. So when he goes ahead and leads out for $175, I'm putting him on either maybe a 2-pair holding, a flop set, or maybe a hand such as 6-7 that has a pair and is also open-ended. Regardless, this hand certainly does hit his range much harder than mine. So after putting this bet out, he is around a little bit less than $700 behind. Not really knowing if I'm ahead or behind at the moment, but one thing I know is that with a pretty big bet, and regardless of what he has, we should have decent equity. I think I'm just going to go with this one, and if we get called, I guess we get called maybe with a better hand and we have a decent amount of equity, or maybe we can fold out some potentially better hands. So I go all in for $890, which is around $690 more to him, and he quickly snap calls. So not really knowing what that means, but we're off to a river, which looks absolutely amazing. It is an offsuit 3. So we sit here with the second nuts on the river, and we happily table our sevens until the big blind wakes up with 7-8 off. I hate to be results oriented, but if I were to call that bet and that river peeled off, I'm just going to be losing my stack regardless. So, I don't hate the line, but it just kind of stinks we ran into it in this hand. But let's see. Hopefully, maybe we can get some back within the next few hands. We add on for $1,000 when we see ace jack of hearts in the big blind. There's a under the gun open +1 elects on a flat call, and with ace jack of hearts, I'm not going anywhere. I like to tag along as well. Going 3 ways to a flop, which comes down queen 8-6 with 2 hearts. So all things considered, a pretty good board. Action starts with me, and I check it to the initial aggressor, and he is pretty quick to throw out $45. And following this bet, the +1 player is pretty quick to make the call. So when action's back on me, obviously we're not going anywhere, and with around $980 behind, I think I want to be trying to apply some pressure. So I go ahead and put in the raise to $200, which in retrospect, I think that might be a little bit small, mainly for the reason that we are at a position, and it's going to be a bit hard to play post-flop with nothing but a flush draw. And it looks like these two players agree, as both of them flick in 2 black chips. So we're off to see a turn 3 ways in a pretty bloated pot, which doesn't bring help by any means. The turn is an offsuit 7. So we don't improve, but at the same time, this card should be a little bit better for my range than these guys' ranges, simply just because they opened up from early position and called. So I could easily have a hand such as like 9-10 of hearts from this spot. And at the same time, I think I can eliminate a lot of the sets and 2 pairs out of these players' ranges simply because the +1 player has been playing his hands pretty straightforward, and then the other player, the under the gun player, has only around $275 behind. So I'd imagine they would be more willing to put in more money on the flop. So with that being said, I could easily have a hand such as 8s or 6s with slightly over a pot-sized bet. I think I'm just going to put it in. All right, I think we're just going to go with it. I slide out the remainder of my chips, all $770 of them, and we luckily, I guess, fade the snap call. So obviously praying on a fold in this spot, but it doesn't look that promising because the under the gun player only has $235 and he does eventually slide those out in the middle. The +1 player, on the other hand, does have me covered, so if he folds, I would only have to put in $235, which is nice. And if he makes the call, on the other hand, yeah, basically I'm just drawing to a heart for an additional $500 or so. So yeah, that's obviously not ideal. The +1 player clearly has a tough decision to be made, but I guess in his eyes, he is getting a decent price, so you know what that means. He goes ahead and flicks in the additional $780. I communicate with these players, and we do agree to run the board 2 different times, so I guess that's a little bit relieving on a draw. Maybe we can get some of our money back. We agree to show the cards now, and what these players have is absolutely surprising. So one player, the under the gun player, has 9-7 of diamonds, so he is a pair and he's open-ended. So not looking real good against him. And then the other player has pocket aces, which I never would have expected in 1,000 years. So certainly not in the best shape in the world, but at least we do have a few live outs. Praying on any heart, which the first board does not come with a king of diamonds, and the second board doesn't come with a offsuit 7. So we're over here punting off $1,000. After losing 2 big pots in a short period of time, we do add on for another bullet. In around 2 hours of play though, we don't get much to work with, but we do claw back an extra $200. So for this session, we do end up taking a $1,800 loss. So as you guys saw there, that session was pretty miserable as, you know, couldn't really get anything going, but we also definitely did not play that well. But luckily for us, we did get our losses back pretty quick. I think within like the next 2 sessions, we already got back our 1.8K, along with a pretty massive win. We had our biggest win to date. We had a 3.6K win in one night, which is one of the few sessions I didn't record, which stinks, but truthfully, it's probably good that I didn't upload that one because there was no skill behind it whatsoever. We were just absolutely crushing it. At the end of the month though, in May, we did, you know, almost like 5 figures, which is crazy. So definitely the best month that I've had in poker so far, which is, you know, also a good feeling along with seeing the growth of the channel. So between those 2 things, May was definitely a top tier month, but that quickly took a downward trend in June. So on June 1st, I'm not even gonna build suspense. We had a second nut flush over the nut flush in a limp pot. We get it all in on the flop and we're up against a queen high flush, but unfortunately they rivered a straight flush for a 3.6 or 3.7K pot. So yeah, that was pretty unfortunate. Another hand that was eventful of this month's period is we have pocket 6s in a straddle pot, and I called a pre-flop raise. There was a squeeze to $150, and I decided to make the call with around 1,300 behind. Planning on set mining, which is exactly what we do when we flop middle set. Sure enough, I lead, and we get it all in the flop, and he rivers a straight. So between those 2 hands, the month definitely is not starting off hot, as we were down, you know, almost 2.5 within like 2 sessions. And that trend, yeah, was a bit constant for the next few sessions, as you guys can see here shortly. There were no eventful hands from this particular session, but with the next one, we do have a pretty cool hand as we look down at ace king off in the +1 position. I go ahead and open up the action to $15, and we do see 3 calls by the cutoff button in the big blind. So we're going to be going 4 ways to a flop at a position which comes down king high. So all things considered, that's a pretty good board when you have ace king. Action checks to me, definitely want to be going for some value, pretty straightforward. I go ahead and size up to the tune of $40. That bet doesn't get too far, as the cutoff player, she goes ahead and raises it up to $110. Action folds back around to me, and a bit of an odd spot, as there are no real draws on the board at the moment. The only real draw at the moment is Queen 10. But at the same time, we do have top pair, top kicker, and I think it might be a little bit too early to make the fold. So with that being said, I like to just make the call and evaluate some future streets. Hoping to either hold or improve. At the moment, I really don't know. But the turn looks pretty safe. The turn comes in a 6 of clubs. So it puts a flush draw on the board, but all things considered, if I was ahead on the flop, I still should be ahead. I check it over to her. At this point, maybe praying to see a cheap showdown, as this player is a little bit tight. But she does not let that happen, as she slides out a bet to the tune of $165. Not loving the spot by any means. But at the same time, I do think my hand is still maybe a little bit too strong to fold. So once again, I make the call and we're off to see a river. So the river is a real interesting card. The river's another jack, which in my eyes initially, this looks like a pretty good card. I go ahead and check my action because once again, I am at this point trying to get a cheap showdown. But unfortunately, she doesn't let that happen. She bets less than half pot. She bets $300. So what in the world does she have? It eliminates the possibilities of a hand such as King Jack. A hand such as Queen 10 did work out, and the backdoor flush draw worked out. So she had a hand such as Queen 10 of clubs. Yeah, we are definitely beating that. The only issue though is I couldn't imagine this player valuing a weaker king. We are losing to pocket deuces, but a hand like King Deuce of diamonds, we are beating that. I think it is pretty close, but with a half pot size bet, I think we are getting a decent enough price to just call and see what happens. So after flicking in the chip, we were far from right on our read, as she shows Jack Deuce offsuit. So she definitely got the maximum, but I guess on the bright side, this is a pretty good table to be at. Unfortunately, after that session, we didn't get anything else to work with, but in this new session, we look down at 2 queens in the under the gun position. I open up the action to $15 on one of the first hands played at this new table, and we do see a call from the cutoff, but the button decides that 15 isn't enough. The button puts in a pretty big raise. He raises all the way up to $95. So I have played with this player before. He is a very aggressive player, but he's definitely one of the more competent regulars at Coconut Creek. It's one of those spots how we both know how each other plays. And yeah, I've caught him bluffing a lot in the past, so this is one of those spots that I think he actually is pretty strong, and he's trying to get maximum value with his image. But at the same time, we have queens, and we're definitely not folding queens to a single pre-flop raise. So with all that logic, I like to just flat call and maybe set the trap if he is bluffing. All things considered, I think he does have a value hand in this spot, and the cutoff player, she ends up getting out of the way. So we're going heads up to a flop out of position. The flop comes down 10-10-3 with 2 clubs, so all things considered a pretty good board with kings. I go ahead and check my action to him, and he sizes down to $65. Getting a decent price, no need to raise and fold out any bluffs, so I happily just make the call and we're off to see a turn, which is a Deuce of Spades. So it does put up a backdoor flush that we do have the Queen of Spades, so I don't think that's a real concern, but this time he goes ahead and sizes up drastically to $255. A bit of a weird spot, and I'm kind of getting the sense that this player is sizing up for an appropriate sizing on the river after sizing down drastically on the flop. But at the same time, we do have queens, and I mean, as simple as it is, I think it is still a bit too early to be even considering a fold with a hand as strong as queens. Pretty straightforward. I go ahead and make the call, and we're off to see a river. The river brings no help to our exact hand. The river is a 5 of spades. So the backdoor flush does end up coming through. I do contemplate leading on this card simply to set my own price if we are beat. But at the same time, I feel like he might be able to sniff that out because he is a pretty good player. So I like to just check it. And fortunately, he does put me to the test as he goes ahead and chips all in. So this is a bit of a disgusting spot as we are getting, you know, a decent price to make the call, but I just don't think he's bluffing in the spot. This is one of those spots where on a video it's maybe a bit hard to elaborate on his image, but I promise you this is the kind of player that knows how to play, and he knows that I know he's aggressive, and I just don't think he's ever bluffing, simply because if I call a $250-something bet on the turn and the river, for the most part, bricks out, yeah, I should be calling off this bet for the most part. I don't think the backdoor flush is that much of a concern, as I do have the queen of spades, but I think he either has one of 4 hands. I think he could have easily 9-10 suited, Jack-10 suited, aces, or kings, well, in which all those hands beats us. So I try to talk to him a little bit. I asked if he'll show me, and he says no. And I just eventually elect on a fold. One of those spots where, in retrospect, it looks extremely nitty, in which you could definitely make an argument that it is. But I have a friend who is friends with this player, and it is confirmed that I made a good fold, as he tells him at a later date. So a bit unfortunate on that one, and shortly after that hand, we do get involved in one other hand this session. We add on for another 1,000, and then within an orbit later, we have 2 9s in a straddled pot. There's 2 calls, and I go ahead and bump it up to $60. We're in the low jack position, and it doesn't really matter, as it does fold back around to the initial straddler. He gets out of the way, but the big blind, he does the old-fashioned limp re-raise to $185. So we're both sitting with, at this point, 1,000 behind, as I just recently rebought from the prior hand. After losing the queen's hand, it might look like I'm on tilt, because I did share to the table that I folded queens. So maybe he is trying to make a move, but end of the day, I like to just make the call, and we're off to see a flop. Off to see a flop in position, which comes down king 9-5 with 2 clubs. So we end up hitting our set, and what is interesting is right when this board comes out, one of the players agonizes and says that he folded pocket 5s. So a bit of a tell that, you know, the other player does not have pocket 5s. So we're sitting here with the second nuts. Unfortunately, he does check it to me, so I definitely need to be pulling a pot myself. So I go ahead and size up to $150, but he doesn't think too long and does in fact make the call. I haven't played with this man before, but maybe he is doing this with a hand as strong as like pocket aces, and he was just doing a little bit of pot control on the flop. But regardless, happy to see him put in some more money on the flop. Going heads up to a turn still, which comes a 8 of spades. So another flush draw on board, and he checks into me once again. At this point, the stack to pot is a bit awkward, so I think one sizing makes a lot of sense. And that sizing is going to be for all of the chips. So I go ahead and jam all in. And as you guys can see, he beats me into the pot and tables no hand other than pocket kings. Wow. So that means there was a set over set over set on the flop. Yeah, not too much more to be said about this one, besides this hand was absolutely sick. After that session, it does take me a few days to cop back into the casino, but we do get involved in another hand shortly after in the next session with ace deuce of spades. The under the gun player decides on a limp, and I raise it up to $20. Unfortunately, I guess that sizing is a bit small, because 4 of the 8 players at the table decide to make the call. So we're going 5 ways to a flop, hoping to maybe hit something, because it's hard to navigate a flop with 5 people, but I guess an ace high board is pretty good. Even though we are 5 ways, I think I still want to be narrowing out the field when action is checked to me. Even with the worst kicker like a 2, still want to deny equity from maybe any 9 or 10 that could maybe catch up somehow, or like a hand like queen jack. So I bet out $50, and we only get 1 call by the player directly to my left, the low jack. Happy to narrow out the field, but now it's going to be a bit hard to navigate on streets out of position. So when we're going heads up to a turn, which comes a 5, this is a card that I think I want to be slowing down on a little bit. So I like to check for pot control, but the low jack does not let that happen, as he slides out a bet of $175. There is another flush draw on board, but once again, he could have a hand such as queen jack, or maybe a hand like 8-7, or maybe even like jack 8 that is open-ended that we still do beat. The only problem is that this sizing is pretty big. It's almost a pot-sized bet, but regardless, I didn't check to fold to a single bet, so I like to make the call, and we're off to see a river. So the river is a interesting card. The river's another ace, so now we're beating all 2 pairs. We're still beating all missed draws, and now's the question whether I want to be leading out or checking to induce, and I think I like the second option a little bit better. Expecting him to slow down some percentage of the time, but this time is not one of those times that he throws out a pretty massive bet. The low jack throws out a bet of $375, so definitely not loving this situation at all. So we do beat all the missed draws, obviously. Now we beat any of the flop 2 pairs that might have turned their hand into a bluff. After betting flop and checking turn on a board that is pretty dynamic, I think this player knows that I wouldn't be doing this with a hand that is stronger than 1 pair at best. So maybe he is putting me to the test, but at the same time, a river like this is not a good river to be bluffing at if you're in his shoes regardless. But at the same time, you know, we did river trips, so I think you know where I'm going with this. I think, you know, it's pretty 50-50, and truthfully with the bet sizing, I probably should be folding more times than not. But this time, I do eventually elect on a call. After I make the call, he says he has an ace, which means that we are no good as he shows ace jack. So yeah, that is one of those hands that is going to have a speed, but it's pretty interesting that he went for those large sizing. So I guess he figured that ace jack was the best ace that is going to be, you know, in the hand at this point, because I want to be checking the turn with a hand as strong as ace queen or ace king. So yeah, props to him for going for that large sizing, but yeah, all things considered, played this hand pretty poorly, and for the past few sessions just have been pretty out of it. So all things considered, a pretty miserable start to the month, but so as of right now though, we are back on the right track, and you know, maybe this was like a good learning lesson because I feel like I have gotten better as a player during this little downswing. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. We aren't done yet. I still have the Q&A, but I would assume a vast majority of you guys are probably going to be peacing out now. So I appreciate you guys for watching. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed, and yeah, just let you guys know, once again, the normal videos are going to go back super shortly. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and for those who are interested about me and the channel and poker, now it's time for the Q&A. All right guys, this is my second time recording this, so let's get into it. All right, the first question I have from Golden Grams, he asks, how do you afford to play poker at such a young age while still affording other things? Great question, and the answer is pretty simple. So prior to poker, back when I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, I worked at a retailer, a supplement shop retailer called GNC, which from that period up until March of 2020, which is when the stock market bottomed out, I had a good amount of money just from working at that retail shop. So in March of 2020, I threw my whole net worth within like a month's period into the stock market. Those who invest are aware that the returns have been pretty substantial. So certainly a little bit of luck, or a lot of luck, was involved in that one. But being young, you know, I could endure a decent amount of risk and, you know, still be okay with it. And that's what I did. Basically, I made my poker bankroll initially through investments, but now what I do is I completely fuel my poker, you know, bankroll with the profits of prior sessions. So I keep my investments and my poker, you know, profits and bankroll separate. But that's a real good question. And in terms of affording other things, I'm a student right now, and truthfully, I don't have that many expenses. So basically, I try to live as frugal as possible. And yeah, that's really it. Next question is real similar to the previous one. How did you start your bankroll? Looking for advice on getting started. How much is needed for a newbie playing at 1-2 no limit hold'em? So that's a real good question. So I played 1-2 really up until around 5 months ago when I started the channel. And my biggest, you know, word of advice is obviously profit at 1-2 before you know, take a stab at 2-5. But with 1-2, with the rake included, it's hard to make a substantial amount of money in, you know, a short period of time. So if you're playing 1-2, it's definitely important, well, really with any stakes, is to have other sources of income, basically to, you know, build your bankroll and play your tougher games. But yeah, as of right now, I think it's real important to have, you know, at least around the minimum, I would say around 20 buy-ins before you take a shot into, you know, 2-5. The next question is, congrats, my man. When do you see yourself playing 5-10? So that's a real good question, and truthfully, I am willing to play 5-10 now, but that opportunity hasn't really been presented because the local casino that I play at, the 5-10 table is extremely tough relative to the, you know, people I normally play with. So my logic at the moment is, why would I take a shot in the 5-10 game where I would probably be the underdog, while I could just play in, you know, 2-5 games where I do have, you know, probably a slight advantage over other people. So basically, I'm gonna play 2-5 or 5-10 as soon as the game looks good, but who knows how promising that is in the near future. The next question is from Nick. He says, you look young and healthy. Are you also an athlete? What other hobbies do you have? So Nick, I greatly appreciate that. And if you consider playing Call of Duty Warzone, if you consider those being athletes, then yeah, I'm an athlete. But besides that, I am not an athlete. I played basketball back in high school, but as of right now, I'm just really big into fitness. And besides poker, that's really my main thing is, you know, lifting weights. And that's actually kind of why I got into poker, because I was so big into fitness on YouTube, like, you know, in the fitness space. But the thing about that is it's so competitive, and a lot of those guys take supplements and substances that me as a 21-year-old, it's just not appropriate to take. So that's kind of what resorted to me starting poker in a sense, because it was something that, you know, I could compete in and something that I was, you know, equally as passionate about. So real good question. And yeah. All right, Fish Poker is another fellow YouTube vlogger. So if you haven't checked his channel out, go check it out real quick. All right, so Fish asked, what do you do before a poker game to motivate yourself and play your A game? I'm having an issue right now where I'm not playing my top A game and I know it. Do I need a break? Do you ever take breaks? If so, how long? So that's a real good question, and it's actually pretty relevant because I was going through the same thing around 2 months ago, or 2 weeks ago. So my thing is this, obviously, you know, taking breaks is important just for, you know, your mental health as a poker player, because, you know, you can get burnt out, you know, pretty quickly, and then if you're running bad, that'll just exacerbate, you know, your losses. So my advice would be, you know, obviously take a break when you're feeling like you need to take a break, but some advice that's probably not, you know, advised by the masses is go up in stakes. And the reason being is because if you go up in stakes, the adrenaline of, you know, that first time playing is, that little variable is going to be there, which as a result will make you play tighter. And I know for me personally, whenever I'm not playing my best, I'm always playing way too wide of a range from, you know, whatever position. So my advice would be, you know, take a few days off and then actually go up in stakes if that is possible. Yeah, Fish, real good question. Keep killing it, and happy to see you comment on the post. The next question is, what do you do to get your videos recognized by so many people? Is it the tags, the title? So truthfully, I don't really know the answer to this question, but if I had to take a guess, it's probably because I was, to my understanding, the first person down here in South Florida to start a poker vlog. As you guys are aware, or probably the majority of you guys, there has been, you know, maybe a few others, and the most popular one, and one that, you know, I've communicated with a good bit is Lexo. Besides the point, I think, you know, regardless of, you know, how many views you get initially, if you put in, you know, hard work and people can see that the content is relatable or they enjoy it, the cream is going to always rise to the top, meaning that the good content will always be, you know, eventually recognized. So just put in hard work, and, you know, you'll realize if it's something you want to do real soon. The next question by Thomas is, at what point did you take up poker vlogging? It's been a while and I've been thinking about starting my own vlog. So my advice would be, start your own vlog. It is a lot of fun, and it's almost like a, you know, a time capsule. So one day you can look back and see like all the hands you played and whatnot. But, you know, as for me, when did I take up poker vlogging? I took up poker vlogging very shortly after even playing poker. So probably, you know, I started playing in September, and I started my poker vlog in, you know, January. So October, November, December, you know, 4 months I was only playing poker live. I played back at home in Charlotte, but, you know, it's just not the same by any stretch. So, you know, it doesn't really matter your experience, because, you know, I'm super grateful for everyone who's tuning into my channel, and by no means am I, you know, anywhere near the experience as some of these other poker vloggers. The last question is, do you ever plan on traveling to other poker rooms in Florida? Let me know if you come to Daytona. I'm actually looking to travel quite a bit in the near future. I'll definitely be out in Vegas for the series, so looking forward to that. I haven't been out there yet. I'll probably come out before then, to be honest. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to traveling. And then something else is, I want to play on one of those live streams. That would be so much fun. So hopefully I can make that happen in the near future. But anyways, guys, that is all the questions I have today. So hope you guys enjoyed that little segment, learn a little bit more about me, and maybe just spread some of my you know, thoughts and whatnot. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. That's all I have for now. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I appreciate it, guys. And thank you guys for 5,000 subscribers once again. Hopefully we can get to 10K here shortly, and I appreciate it once again. See you guys.